Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you all for this talk today on film as tool in ethnography study. So we are basically CSMCH Film Club, Community of Social Medicine, Center for Social Medicine and Community Health in JNU, and we have started this film club in February 2019 with 8 of our members part of this club, along with the other students who consecutively joined. So basically, we have till date screened movies like Sairat, Ganashatru, Virus, Hanimani, 12 Year and a Night, and Article 15, which was a huge success where we could showcase the film in the auditorium Metropolis 1, and the director Anubhav Sinha was also present for a very lively discussion. For today's talk, I like to introduce Dr. Sunita Reddy, who is an associate professor here in CSMCH, and I would like to quote you, ma'am.
So, and we look forward to have more films after COVID is gone, and more in terms of having them screened in the center. However, this platform of Zoom actually helps to connect. Uh, uh, yes. So actually, Zoom platform helps to connect across the world, and that's a great platform we realize in COVID. And we are able to screen, and also people can join from other places. Uh, um, you have to mute others, please. Yes. So without wasting time, let me just invite and introduce Dr. Alison Kahn. Dr. Kahn is in the center. She is the director of Oxford Film Institute, and she's been with us for quite some time now. She's a ethnographic maker and been making films. And latest, her film is the on the from the and this is more of a participatory filmmaking, which they have done in 2019, just before COVID, and has been nominated for many awards. Dr. Khan has been also involved in museum anthropology and based in UK, but her roots are also in India, so she is very much connected with heart with India. And also a colleague and a friend, Dr. Avitoli from Delhi University. So they've been organizing few workshops related to ethnographic filmmaking. And please, one of you be on the job to just mute the mic. And yeah, so we've been organizing, Dr. Avitoli, myself, and Alison, we've been organizing few workshops related to filmmaking, and especially ethnographic filmmaking. And we did one 25 hours program to Anthropos India Foundation recently, and there was a very good response, and few participants also came up, and one of them was COVID children, talking about the digital divide and how children face problems in getting education during COVID time. This was a film made by 16-year-old Miss Navya Sara. We'll be sharing that film with you later. And Dr. Khan is also proposing to do a few more workshops, which are more in-depth and in detail at 3 different levels. The first level, which will be for the newcomers who wants to filmmaking and using even a mobile phone or camera. So there are 3 which we are coming up. Level 1 for the beginners, level 2 for those who understand about filmmaking but want to hone much more skills, and level 3 for professionals, where you can learn about the pre-production, post-production, and also hands-on training on editing. So there are a lot of things in offer, but then today Alison will be talking about liminality, and then how filmmaking can be, an ethnography can be a tool in filmmaking, and also how we see a difference between a film which is ethnographic film as compared to a documentary film. So some of the basic things, and then she'll be showcasing few short films talking about different kinds of ethnographic films, and then we'll open up after her presentation for discussion. So all of you, welcome once again, and I'm really glad that all of you could join, especially the anthropology group I just sent. I thought let others also get a chance to listen to Alison once again. So thanks for joining, and over to you, Alison.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Reddy, and thank you very much, JNU Film Club, for inviting me. My heart really goes out to you at the moment, because in a way, this is almost like a full circle for me. When I began studying anthropology, I came from a language background. I came from literature, French. I came from a theatre background in my first degree. And I studied visual anthropology at master's level. And my study became more focused on museums and filmmaking, because I felt that these were two brilliant platforms to exhibit our findings in a place of exhibition and education in a museum. But also I realized at the beginning of the digital revolution that the digital tools of film and digital film and editing would be the most effective tool to get across new ideas and old ideas and really reach a much greater public. So although the text was always very important and remains very important, it's so we've now 20 years on, we realize now the benefits of understanding not just how to read and analyze films, but also how we can make them. And so if you like, when I arrived at Oxford to do my MPhil in material anthropology and visual anthropology, which then became my DPhil, the first thing I tried to do was to set up a film club, just like you. So you guys are doing exactly what I did when I arrived in Oxford, and I noticed there was no projector. So I knocked on the door of the college president every day. Please, can you buy us a projector? And this was, we raised some money in the common room, and we got together and we created the Oxford Student Ethnographic Film Society. And this was created in 2000, so 21 years ago. And we invited people because I was really intrigued. I'd studied, I'd looked at the canon, the ethnographic films that had been made on the 20th century, but how are we going to be able to make these films? Who's going to censor us? And how do people learn how to make film as well as become anthropologists? And this in a way has been a big question that I've been trying to battle with, but also contend with as an anthropologist. So I've always tried to keep up with the digital changes. And now I work in digital media, creating platforms for children in education, but also I make little short films and I make films when people invite me to. So it's really interesting how I have in the last 20 years, because I set up this film club, because I started to learn from the professionals how they did it, from the pre-production stage to the post-production stage, then this continual movement forward made me able to keep up with what was going on. And therefore, you know, now I'm very happy to say that I still make films and I continue to do this. And over the last 20 years, I've probably done about 50 workshops in different universities, trying to give the power to the academics, because this was what was happening beforehand. The production of the films lay just in the hands of the broadcasters. It was very difficult to get your film on television, or indeed as a feature film, very expensive process. And so the democratization of film through digital media has made it possible for us all to become broadcasters. And you're in the happy generation that you have all the tools at your disposal. But I'm just here to remind you of some of the ways, if you like, the link between the analog and we don't forget what happened before. So today I'm just going to share with you a little bit about a concept from anthropology. Victor Liminality brought it into his fieldwork, but he was taking that from an ancestor way back in the 20th century. And I want to really get you to start thinking visually about, okay, we have ideas about going into the field, we have ideas about making ethnographic film, but what does that mean? Who am I as a filmmaker, and how can I make an impact on the people that I'm working with? Not just go take a film and run away back to the academy, but make a film and do something good with it, really be part of that community for the longevity, not just pop in and out when we feel like it. So here I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint and show 4 films. I'm hopefully not going to talk too much in between each film because I'd love to hear your questions at the end, but I think I'm just going to provide a base for us to discuss some things afterwards. So here I'm going to share my screen. Could I have the sharing possibility, please, to share my screen?
Yeah, just a second. Yeah, I think you can.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll start at the top. Can you? Okay, can you see this? Does that work for you?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, great. Okay, do keep your cameras on if you like, so I can say hi to you and see some faces. It's always nice to talk to people rather than a screen. So here we go. So first of all, let's get back to the basics. Let's get back to the basic idea of storytelling. I know we're all very sophisticated spectators, we're very sophisticated at watching films, but how did we learn to write? How did we learn to make stories? So we learn to make stories by responding to questions like, what did you do today at nursery? What did you have for dinner? Who did you play with? So if we harvest some of those first conversations that we had when we had those building blocks of narration. I played with Johnny today. He snatched my toy. I cried. That in a scene could be a one-shot sequence. This is the way that we build up our visual cinema. It all starts with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's how we began to speak, and that's how we began to tell stories. The teacher told him off and he said, sorry, we made friends again. This has even got a part 1 and a part 2. So already we were very good at making stories from the very beginning. Joining linguistic capability with memory and communication. As we get older, our stories become more complex. Our experience helps us to edit the stories we tell as we recognize the audience that is listening. What did we do to join up the narratives in our tales? How did we copy, or who did we copy, and who told stories about us? So when we're considering making ethnographic films, we're really gathering together a lot of the knowledge that we already have in our memory. We add our theoretical consideration and inspiration. We traditionally, in ethnographic filmmaking, as I'm sure you've seen a lot of the canon of ethnographic film, they focused on minority groups, small-scale societies, but now not necessarily. Now, any group of people can be ethnographic, but it's the approach and the method that will make it ethnographic. So if we look at Carl Haider, Haider has been quite one of the classical, if you like, writers about ethnography and ethnographic filmmaking. And some people use this grid to what institutes and on. If it reminds us, some people mark ethnographic films like this, but I'm going to take you slightly out of this box in a minute to sort of, so we're not too weighed down by all the limitations, all this prescriptiveness about ethnographic film, because usually a lot of these films they're hard to analyze, because an ethnographic film takes so many different types of dimensions. Here he talks about appropriateness of sound, narration, whether there's narration or not, whether there's an ethnographic basis, is there explicit theory, is there relation to printed materials, voice, point of view, a behavioral contextualization, physical contextualization, reflexivity, the ethnographer's presence, whole acts, narrative stories, whole bodies, whole interactions, whole people, distortion in the filmmaking process, inadvertent distortion of behavior, intentional distortion of behavior, and explanation of distortions and cultural change. So this is, 15 years ago, Haider tried to put down some kind of basis often for professors looking at the films that their students have made, to really see, and in ethnographic film festivals and anthropology discussions, what constitutes an ethnographic film. And if some of us have seen Robert Gardner's Forest of Bliss that was filmed in Benares in the 1960s, it came under a lot of criticism because it was seen as too poetic. It wasn't explicit enough about the ethnographic detail in the film. So there's been a lot of different types of analysis, if you like, but who actually make ethnographic films. And let's say someone like David McDougall, he write in a way that is much more sophisticated, and it's really looking at the art of seeing rather than the end product. It's really the method and the way that we observe that really constitutes whether something is ethnographic. Ethnographic fieldwork, go back. Let's go back one. Let's go back. So we look at the documentation of life as it is in relation to focus on an area of social life that gives insight into wider beliefs and social practices, organizations, institutional structures, and connections between them. Historically, ethnographic films have looked at daily routines, crafts, food preparation, games, body decoration, rituals, and rites, just like the text had before. But we add insight into how we read the external as a reflection of the internal. Language, codes, belief, attitudes, and prejudice. So because of the dominance of the audio and visual in an ethnographic film, we have to find ways of conveying the interior because we can only see the exterior. So David McDougall, whose films have really been hailed as, in a way, the best kind of ethnographic films, looking at observation as a method, and really taking time to pause and reflect within the film, not just after the film. And this is why his sequences are very long. But he's made a lot of films in India, and he's written a few very interesting books that I would draw your attention to. His latest, The Looking Machine, in 2019, a quote just from it is, "Seeing is one thing, looking is another." And so we go into this idea of liminality, because David McDougall talks a lot about this idea of liminality, even if not explicitly. It's very much about where we are as the filmmaker. Where do we position ourselves as a filmmaker? This is a little visual I thought was quite helpful, because of us, when we think about ethnographic fieldwork or ethnographic methods, it's almost taken for granted that we as anthropologists have got this very open mind, and that we don't have any problem with self-reflexivity, and that we can suspend our belief, going to other communities and make. Now, I think to really have a bit of self-reflexivity before we even begin fieldwork, let alone begin to make a film, because filmmakers typically are quite egocentric, and filmmakers very quickly pick up a camera and start shooting. And then a lot of their ethnographic training goes out of the window, because they feel that they have to make a film and get back to the academy. And it's very important that we have this type of self-reflexivity before we even go into the field, about who we are and where do we base our self within this study. So here's a very interesting, it's called the elephant in the room pyramid of belief. It's sort of really, you know, you can look at this as a longer, Dave Gray has done this at length, but I just wanted to show you a picture that he draws about how we look at the experience. We would not be, you know, just writes Christian, it could be any particular, any belief, base our knowledge and our assumptions on. And it could be what you've read, it could be, you know, the type of anthropological training you have, that you want to take a structural approach or a functional approach, or you know, all these different types of approaches that we've learned in our anthropology training. But we still create what's called here is this self-sealing logic. And it's that self-sealing logic that makes us live in the bubbles that we do. And we tend to be with people and react to things very much within this safe space. And the idea of going out in the field, as Professor Alan McFarlane tells us, it's almost like becoming a child again, because you have to take steps down from all the ways that you've constructed your reality. And you have to walk across and walk up the steps of somebody else's reality. And these bubbles that we live in and that communities live in are often very, very diverse, very different. And if we don't learn to understand what here is called this internal coherence of another community, that could be to demarcate the passage of time, to demarcate what we mean being the margins, and the kind of films and the kind of people that we might want to film often live in these marginal spaces. So that was, if you like, the point of that exercise there. So let me share again with you my my screen and go back to the PowerPoint. So here we are. Gone through this. Gone through this. And we're looking at this. We've looked at this. We've looked at this. Just to do a recap of building it into kind of textual understanding from the canon of anthropology and how we've done it. So moving ahead, I'm sure you're all familiar factual films, and we're always looking at the relationship between the filmmaker and his or her or their subject to a story. Every choice by the documentary filmmaker becomes the expression of a particular point of view, conscious or unconscious, recognized or unrecognized. And here, notice I'm now using the word documentary, because in many ways ethnographic film and documentary are interchangeable in the filmic approach, but there's always got to be that recognition that we are using this film as an ethnographic film. It's going to be much more concerned with concerns that anthropologists are trying to use in their normal everyday field work. So even if we look at observational, expository, participatory, reflective, performative and poetic, we're always thinking in terms of method here, not just about what we're going to achieve at the end of the day on the screen, but how we are going to achieve that. For me, in many ways, that's one of the main distinctions between the ethnographic approach and the documentary approach. Documentary filmmakers can make films without any thought of the subject in a way that we would think about it as anthropologists, but we often use similar modes of expression. I'm sure you're all familiar with the illustrated lecture approach. I haven't got time here to show you pieces from everything, but here David Attenborough was it was a pioneer in this approach, which is what we call the voice of God. So it actually shows and tells at the same time. Images are subordinate to the voiceover. Editing serves to maintain continuity of the perspective by the often off-screen narrator. The observational mode is something that anthropologists are very keen on. David McDougall would say that a lot of his approach is like the fly on the wall method. He doesn't always show you his role in the dynamics that he's filming. And there's no voiceover commentary, and it often follows, if we think of Heider's explanation about narration, whether there's any reenactments, there's no interviews face-to-face on the camera. So we observe as life as it is in many ways. So this is an interesting film, Sisters-in-Law, that I'm going to share with you. And we'll see just the first few minutes and see what you think of this type of observational approach. It was made 2005, won a lot of films at it won a lot of prizes at ethnographic film festivals. So here we are. I'm just going to show you from the beginning. Okay, so did you all manage to see that okay? Was that clear? Because I'm not sure whether that comes across. Was there any lagging when you were watching?
It was fine.
It was okay. Okay, so that's a film by Kim Longjin Oto, a woman who has filmed quite a few interesting insights into different cultures. She filmed Divorce Iranian Style, which was a very interesting film. And this film is in several parts, and it's all around the different court cases that come to these two women attorneys who live in this village. But it's a very good insight. It's not just women against men. It's not sort of just a big feminist documentary. There are other cases that put different lights on different genders and things. So that's just the beginning. But I urge you to look at it. It's on YouTube, so you can watch the whole film. And I found this a wonderful insight into the legal system in Cameroon. I found it a very interesting ethnography of what happens there. So moving on. So I know I don't want to take up, because the thing is we've had a little bit of a long time sort of introducing. So let me just get back to my PowerPoint here. So let's go past this one. And so share screen. Share. Okay, so that was an example of the poetic mode. Can you see that? So there's also a wonderful film called Baraka that was made by Ron Frick in the early 1990s. And this, just like in many ways, not quite as ethnographic in a way as Forest of Bliss from Benares, but this is very much a comparative assault on the senses. So this is a beautifully made film, a lot of artistic impression, and it shows really different ways of ritual practice, different types of prayer, different types of moments when people get together. And this, I've taken a screen grab of this particular moment in Java at the bottom of a volcano, where these people get together and do a wonderful song. So Baraka by Ron Frick is a very good example of a poetic mode. And then the participatory mode. Now, I wanted to draw your attention to this because obviously in anthropology, we do this as well. We do have participatory types of fieldwork, and it involves, in filmmaking, it involves an interview between the filmmaker and the subject, and it allows the filmmaker to address people who appear in the film. And here we've got Louis Theroux, who's a very well-known documentary filmmaker who's British American, and he goes to all sorts of different communities, largely in America, and really draws out the subcultures that are happening in America. He goes to some quite dangerous groups of people and tries to get them to reveal themselves. So this is so rather than being just behind the camera, this is in filmmaking mode. This is where the filmmaker makes himself part of the film as well, and he participates in the act. So he goes to places with the people and he observes and he participates. So this is another interesting style. And I want to draw your attention to this really interesting piece of research that's going on in Kenya, which is a youth-led peace-building participatory action research group. And there's I can share with you, I think I may have already done the publication, shared the publication on this, but it's recent and it's ongoing. And I'm going to share this with you as well, so you can have a little look at not just the Participatory Research Act as a method in the community, but also how it's being documented as a film for posterity. So people can look at this film and see at a glance what people are doing here. So I'm going to stop share and reshare with you this. I think I'm going to start from 5 minutes in, but you can look at it at your leisure after this. Yeah, so I was watching that and I was very inspired watching that. I thought that was a really interesting combination of community practice, ethnographic research, policy making, and as your film group have already proved, you have skills of writing and publishing already, and publishing with a video is doubly effective because look, I've just shown you that video about this wonderful action of participatory research and action in Mombasa. And you know, I think these comparative studies are really interesting to bring anthropology into active communication with a wider audience, and it embraces so many different issues as well. I also like the performative aspect of that, sort of like a play within a film. So there are many layers of visual detail that kind of short video can project. So I'm just going to finish on a couple of last points, talking about the collaborative mode that I use. So bear with me just a second. So we'll obviously have got perform, but here the collaborative mode. Can you see that, or have I shared it? No. Let's have a look. Let me share screen again. So I'm just going to finish on the collaborative mode so that you know the kind of research that I'm doing. So in a way, I haven't, I do participatory research here in Britain, but when I go, when I went to India, for example, to make a film about the Zemi Olympics, I was only there for a limited amount of time. So I had to work very closely with the leaders of the Zemi Olympic group, who were Zemi, the Zenaga group of now. So these are some of the things that I advise if you're making a film with a collaborative approach, in a sense that it's not, this is a collaborative very much within the making of the film. Obviously there's the social action aside, but this is a film made truly with the voices of the Zemi people. This is not my film. This is a film that I mean, it is my film because I constructed it, I made it possible, I edited it, but every stage, at every stage, I worked closely with lots of different people who gave me input into the film. So there was constant communication, there was discussion before camera was used about the nature of the film and who the stakeholders are. There was a team building element on site, on location, where I took local young filmmakers with me and I said, this is your film, you've made music videos, you've made short TikToks or whatever you've never made a documentary. This is what I need from you. You need to go out into the community and find some representative voices. I taught them some interview techniques and we cleared rights of footage. So there were about 8 cameras. Half of them were my cameras, but the cameras that were being used, we discussed that was going to be all towards this documentary, so they wouldn't post it up on YouTube before I had a chance to put the film together. And we identified the social structure within which we were working. Here it was a celebration of an event in Nagaland, and there were lots of different locations where the sports activities were going on. So we had to create a workflow and allocation of responsibilities. We had to listen to concerns and we had to explain intentions for the production stage. So every point was very much a communication skill that was needed. Then every day we established a routine for filming. We defined expectations, roles, created camera crews. Those teams that weren't working particularly well, we swapped over a bit. We made it seem like it was all a rotation rather than picking out people who perhaps weren't stepping up as much as they could have. Themes, events, they spoke different Zemi languages. There's different dialects in Zemi. So we made sure that the dialects were covered. So when the film at the end was seen, it wasn't seen that it was just Southern Zemi or Northern Zemi that was spoken. We watched the footage daily. We archived it. And we made sure that we could re-find that footage later because we were filming hours and hours a day. We built up a relationship between the film crew and we ate together. Every day we had a meal round a fire together and it built up camaraderie. So when I came to England, I used social media. There was a Facebook group of the Olympics. There were about 8,000 people on this Facebook group, and every time I had a clip I wanted more explanation of, I put a little clip up there and everyone from the community add, comment, tell me who these people were, where they came from. But everything that I hadn't got from the field, I made sure that I had people telling me what this was. Translation of interviews were done over social media. Names, every single person in the Zemi Olympics credited at the end of the film. It was very much a whole. It was an experience. It was an experience for everybody, and none of us had done this before. So it was very it was a real learning experience for all of us. Okay, so I'm just going to show you the first 10 minutes of the Zemi, and I'll finish there. So let me just stop share. Okay, let's stop there. All right then. So I hope that wasn't too long a piece. It's just that I wanted you to see how Jeremiah was my conductor throughout. So we see him first of all on the podium, but we also hear from him through the film. And there's a little bit of there's a reveal at the end, which really shows you kind of his own personal motivation for creating the Olympics. So we went from the macro to the micro and back again. Okay, so thank you for listening. I'm sorry if we went over drastically, but please do ask me any questions, and over to you, Sunita.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alison, for giving a wonderful background about filmmaking, ethnographic filmmaking as a method for research, and also showing different kinds of films which one can make, especially, starting with observation and participatory. I think for policy making and all, important it is to have a participatory method and other films, which then you involve the community, and thereby the filmmaker takes a back seat and the whole thing is happening there and you are just trying to put them together. So there's a lot to do. It's 1.5 hours is too short to get a good understanding of all the different kinds of films. Possibly we can have it in the next sessions, one at a time, so that you get a better understanding of each kind of filmmaking. So I would now like to open up for discussion, and Sharon and Ujjaini, Asrar, any questions, queries, or observations you have, you can please share. Yeah, Ujjaini.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you. One question that I had in my mind was, I'm a student of sociology, and while we were studying sociology of media, we have always thought camera or the lenses, the angles, the cinematography as a voice, as the filmmaker. Anthropological films are where we are, kind of developing concepts of anthropology through a film. In an action research case, in a participatory action research case, how do you think the elements, the other elements, camera, angle, light, will matter, or what are they? Are they the voices of the filmmaker as well in these cases? Does it things up a bit? Because when the filmmaker himself is a participant in the story, then how do you think that would pan out? This is a confusion that I have in my mind. I'm not sure if I've been able to articulate it properly.
Okay, so the moment you pick up a camera, it's a political act. Yeah, the moment you look through a camera, you are excluding and including according to your action. So the problem has always been from the very beginning, because is this the viewpoint of one person? Is this or the subject? Has the subject given permission for the filmmaker to represent him or her or them in this way? So even if we go right back to Flaherty and Nanook of the North, and we know there were so many constructions, and we know that filmmaking is construction of reality. We falsify time and space to create condensed time. And in a way, about a film, that's why in a way filmmaking is a very modernist act, and it's now become a very postmodern act, because modernism always talks about fragmented truth. And so when you're making, if I make a film about my morning at breakfast time through my eyes, I can show you what it's like to be mum making breakfast, whatever. If my child makes a film, it will be a different film. It will be the same thing, the same time, the same place, but it will be through a different set of eyes. So, and also the dynamic of authority, as you say, will change. And there are many films. So if you're looking at camera angles, for example, we have the work of the filmmaker who is called well, Denis O'Rourke is really interesting when he goes into his film of cannibal tours, and he makes the audience feel really uncomfortable because he is filming people talking among themselves about the other, and he's exposing racial prejudice. So, you know, he aims the camera in a way at the tourists going into Papua New Guinea. And so when we're watching that film, we're thinking, hang on a second, we're not really learning much about this tribal experience. The film's called Cannibal Tours. So in the title, there is a satire on the way we observe the other. But the other person is, I can't remember his name for a second, it slipped my mind, Frederick Wiseman. So Frederick Wiseman in the 1960s started to film institutions in America, and he used the camera in very subtle but very ways. Titicut follies about camps, and so he wanted to show how institutions in America worked. And so you look and you see how he tilts his camera, and the audience feels the dominance of authority. The child's looking up into the camera. There's a dominance of the teacher looking down. There's a concentration on as the bully boy in the room kind of thing. So yes, of course, the camera technique is something that is we will, you know, you learn many different photographers are trained to do that kind of film and yeah, and you can be very subtle with it. So in participatory methods that you speak about, you know, views from that experience is, I would say. What do you think?
Yes, but you know, what I was trying to find out was, is there anything that we can read about or see knowledge where the researcher himself is a participant in the there must be complications that generate out of that sphere itself, because he's working behind the camera, he's also participating, he has a voice and an agency which the other participants might not. So there is a certain you know, a problematic sphere where the rigor of the research also you know, when we try to venture in, the first thing that strikes me, the research may go down, we won't be able to do what we had set out to. So researcher faces on the field intrigues me, because also
no, you're absolutely right. When filmmaking was not even on this, professors would say go into the film and do a written ethnography at the same time. It's too complicated, because the skills that you need to make a good film and the skills that you need to write an ethnography are very different. Always filmmaking is an extra complication. It can be, now it's so ubiquitous now. It's so ubiquitous, just picking up a camera. Everybody has a film possibility of filming through their telephones. and of course that is going to propose difficult can get around this is to be self-reflexive and to be honest and face the camera. So if you're the participatory person in the workshop but you're making the film, you state where you are, just like Malinowski did when he wrote, you know, the Argonauts in 1922. Yeah. He said, here I am, I'm sitting here under a palm tree. You know, he states himself as an outsider. Already.
Right.
Best films are those which are honest,
Another point to add or share or any query? From anyone? Film Club?
Yes, hello everyone.
Hello.
I think, yes, ma'am. So I think this is a brilliant presentation she has done, and really we have got lots of information. And yes, we were just interested to know how things, how
are you making the film?
Hello, am I audible?
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do go
Yes.
ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. So, but we were just interested to know how film as a research tool can be used in social sciences research. That's why we have organized this meeting, and I think you have done a commendable presentation, and we definitely have lots of information we got. So I think we can open this question answer session, and then Ujjani will give a vote of thanks. I think, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Alison ma'am and Sunita ma'am for moderating this. And I think Ujjani will go ahead with this proper vote of thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Asrar. Also wanted to add that Alison has a team at Oxford Documentary Film Institute. And in fact, I think 2 years back, we were also talking about films on public health. And she has her colleagues who make films on public health issues, and there was a planning to have a festival. I think that got postponed, but from our center, Alison, Center of Social Medicine Community Health, as you know, and now having Android with all of us, we do carry fieldwork in the first and second semester, where we take students to both urban and rural setup, where we look at healthcare services from these all levels, 3 levels, where you call the center and the community health centers and till district hospital. Think of a few sessions or colleagues also along with you on how to capture the health issues on the field, mobile documentary films, of documentary evidences of showcasing health issues which we come across, maybe in a tribal setup, maybe in a rural setup, and the kind of work which we do and understand the pressures on the public health hospitals. And we have a very vibrant but yet very diversified private sector. So there are many, many issues which we can showcase through films, and this, even short films, which can really bring out the essence. So maybe we'll discuss with our film club as to if we can have a week-long or 3-day students from 2 films. So we'll plan that in future. So I just wanted to share that. The other on 14th and 15th, at IG Zeme, the Olympic also being showcased, and along with that, there are many films which are being showcased. I'm sure all of you students who are in now campus can come and visit 2-day festival on 14th and 15th. All of you are welcome. And Alison, any suggestions on this public health films and making of films? If you can briefly tell us, and then
yes,
we can close
I
the
have
session.
a question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Dr.
Yeah, I am Neetu.
Hi.
Oh,
Yes,
sorry, Neetu.
yeah, I was just thinking, I had a question that how can we differentiate between a qualitative interview or a ethnographic interview? It's a question that keeps coming in my mind, and like I have not got this answer, a clear-cut answer of how to differentiate between a qualitative and an ethnographic interview. When suppose in terms of filming, then how would we differentiate that we are taking an ethnographic film? This is actually the question. I hope it's clear.
Well, there are different types of interviews to start with. And I think what you mean, I mean, there's some great, with qualitative, the ethnographic data is largely a qualitative exercise in itself, that the ethnographic approach may alter slightly from a straight interview that maybe a talking head or somebody is, because it may be that you're giving more, it's more collaborative, you're giving more voiceover to the person who is trying to tell you what you're trying to find out. So for example, it may be an action interview. You may be somebody may be in the field doing their work, and they'll be explaining, and they'll take more control over that interview. There are different types of interviews that you can actually explore within the ethnographic process. So it's not just about sitting across a table. And, you know, as I was talking about before, the angles of the camera are very important. We always look up into somebody's face when we hold a camera. Now, this isn't always thought about in a straight interview across the table, but an ethnographic interview, there'd be more ethical procedures that would make sure that the person that we're interviewing is in control of their representation. I mean, that's a thing that has been ignored in the past, of photographs being taken of people and interviews being taken without without them really allowing it. So it's much more, let's say, of a negotiated space, and that negotiated space comes through maybe more knowledge of the person. And, you know, ethnographic fieldwork kind of defines itself by the fact that you spend more time with people. It's not journalistic. You don't just go in and out. So perhaps it's, you know, it's more of a dialogic process.
Thank you so much.
Does that help? I'm not sure if that helps, but we can maybe discuss this, and Dr. Adi and I will maybe put together a little piece on this, because it's very interesting, that question, qualitative and ethnographic, because I kind of see them wrapped up in each other, and I'm just wondering what the end result is, what the end result you want is out of that.
Yes, maybe that will be good, because still the confusion still remains as to how to define the time that we spend with the interviewer, and how much time or what kind of contextual background that we will be putting in ethnographic, and that would not be there in qualitative interviews. And also in terms of ethics, I think in qualitative interviews also we do take care of the ethical consent of the interviewer whom we are talking. So how do we differentiate the question? Like, still that the differentiation is very difficult to make out.
Mm-hmm. I think in some cases, in some cases there'll be no difference. So
Okay.
I think we have to look at these overlapping. Let's I tell you what, we'll draw 2 circles and we'll see the overlaps. And we'll see what is qualitative and not ethnographic, and what is both. So maybe we should just do that Venn diagram and see
Okay.
whether, and that might be of use. I'll have a look at that and get back to you, Neetu, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neetu, and Alison, for your valuable time.
You're welcome.
Sharing all your experiences, your films, and I'm sure we are going to interact much more. Over.
Thank you for this
Jenny,
wonderful evening.
Wait a minute. Can we take a screenshot of your those who are present here? Can we open those who are comfortable? Open the video. We can just take a screenshot.
A lot of us are very shy. Not. Yes, we should do that in the beginning when we have all the.
Yeah.
All the.
Anyway, yes.
Friends around.
Done. Thank you very much. And thank you, ma'am, Sunita ma'am, for proposing a public health film festival. We will definitely discuss. And ma'am, Alison ma'am, we are really connected to the idea that you shared, that in college time we have a film club, and that's how the memories of colleges are. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be in your company. And thank the director of the board here to come and talk to you as well, and to tell you about his film festival, because I'm on the panel, and I think asking Dr. Redlight to join that public health film. I'll share with you some of the film called
and
to rethink research. I've shared Twitter handle on the chat box. If participants here are today interested, please go through our Twitter account and other social media accounts and do follow us. And thank you for being here. And thank you all the participants for, it was rather a long session, but very, very insightful and informative. Thank you for being with us.
And thank you, Jenny, and hope to see you all at the film festival on 14th.
Okay. And thank you very much. See you again. Bye-bye.
Take care.